Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. One of the very first videos that I ever done received its fair share of criticism because it was on how transgenderism, or more accurately, gender dysphoria, is a mental illness. Today I want to talk about a new study that claims to have found that transgender identity is not a mental disorder and why I think the author of this article, Chrissy Williams, is being dishonest. So, her article says that new findings suggest that it would be appropriate to remove the diagnosis of transgender from the current classification as a mental disorder in the ICD. The research, led by the National Institute of Psychiatry, interviewed 250 transgender people and found that it's not a mental disorder as once believed. Apparently, distress and impairment are the two essential characteristics of a mental disorder, and they found that transgender people can experience some distress, but not because they are transgender, but because of social rejection and violence. So immediately we see that we're dealing with a very small sample size, 250 people. Later on in this very article, it's acknowledged that the estimate is that there are about 1.4 million Americans who are transgender alone. So you can see why taking the results from 250 people and saying a disorder that affects over 1 million people in America alone is quite troubling. So the article claims that the distress and impairment found in transgender people is not because they're transgender and suffer from gender dysphoria, but actually due to social rejection and violence. For the purpose of critiquing this article, I'm going to refer back to and show you a study that I read quite a while ago that helped me to shape some of my opinions on the matter. This study, done on the suicide attempts among transgender and gender non-conforming adults, was carried out by the Williams Institute, and as you can see here, their responses were obtained from 6,456 transgender and gender non-conforming adults aged between 18 and above. A far more reliable sample size than just 250 people, I'm sure you'll agree. Now I'm going to show you their findings once we've progressed through the recent article a bit more. So the article continues. The field study was conducted in Mexico City between April and August of 2014, with 250 participants who received mental and health care services. The researchers revealed that the Mexico study is the first in a series of studies that hope to be able to confirm the findings so transgender identity can be removed as a mental disorder. This reclassification will not only promote discussions for new health policies for the trans community to have better access to health services, but it will also help to reduce the stigma and rejection they are victims of. One of the determining factors for a psychiatric disorder is distress and dysfunction, but they found other causes for this feeling as well, such as social rejection, family relationship problems, and stigmatization in the community. Now, I find it quite concerning that they state right here that these causes are just some of many other causes and have chosen to omit these other causes in favour of telling the reader that social rejection and stigmatisation are the main causes of distress in trans people. Because now, if we return to the larger and more accurate study, you see that the key findings of their report include an analysis of other demographic variables that found the prevalence of suicide attempts being highest among those who are aged between 18 to 24, for those who are multiracial, for American Indians or Alaska Natives, and for those who have lower levels of educational attainment and those who have a lower annual household income, as well as those who have also experienced rejection, discrimination, victimization, or violence, and those who are harassed or bullied at school or work. So there are a lot of different combining factors that can cause significant distress for trans people. The larger study says here, quote, overall, the most striking finding of our analysis was the exceptionally high prevalence of lifetime suicide attempts reported by respondents across all demographics and experiences. I think this helps to show us that the article claiming that social rejection, family relationship problems, and stigmatization in the community are not the main causes of distress for trans people. I mean, if we look at the National Health Service definition, they say that gender dysphoria is a condition where a person experiences discomfort or distress because there is a mismatch between their biological sex and their gender identity. It's sometimes known as gender identity disorder, gender incongruence, or transgenderism. Now, of course, curbing discrimination and stigmatisation should be a priority, but to claim that it's the sole cause, and therefore a reason that transgenderism or gender dysphoria should no longer be seen as a mental illness is just not rational. But let's finish this article. Now, they asked participants to report what age they first became aware of having a transgender identity, as well as what type of distress they felt, including social rejection and any violence they suffered, though for some reason these results are not given in this article. The study found that 76% of the participants reported that they experienced social rejection, with 63% noting being a victim of violence as a result of their transgender status. They found that having transgender identity was not an indication of mental disorder, but coping with transgender identity could cause a person to experience distress and dysfunction, which leads to mental illness symptoms. Again, sheer dishonesty. I would say that experiencing distress due to having been born biologically as one sex while feeling the other is a pretty good fucking symptom of mental illness. I don't need to lie to myself, and neither should you. Quote, our findings support the idea that distress and dysfunction may be the result of stigmatization and maltreatment rather than integral aspects of transgender identity. This study highlights the need for policies and programs to reduce stigmatization and victimization of people with transgender identities. The removal of transgender diagnosis from the classification of mental disorders can be a useful part of those effects. How? People who go out of their way to harass and discriminate against transgender people are not going to suddenly not want to do that just because it doesn't happen to be in the fucking manual anymore. But anyway, the researchers hope that this study may reduce or eliminate the stigma attached to having a transgender identity. In time, transgender identity will be removed from the ICD and may eventually be accepted socially. Again, claiming that the distress stems solely from stigmatization and maltreatment is terribly misleading, and using this dishonest information in an attempt to eliminate said stigmatization is wishful thinking. There are arseholes in the world. You're not going to get rid of them by taking something out of a book. As mentioned earlier, the UCLA Williams Institute estimates that there are about 1.4 million Americans who are transgender. Now, this is where it gets interesting and why I decided to make this video. In a separate study, 57% of transgender youths who didn't have supportive parents attempted suicide. They found that only 4% of transgender youths tried to kill themselves if they felt supported by their family. Now, can you guess what that separate study was? That's right, the Williams Institute study. That 57% statistic is listed on the same fucking page that concludes that the most striking find was the high prevalence of suicide attempts reported across all demographics and all experiences. This article chose to completely omit the fact that transgender people who happen to be multiracial, American Indian or an Alaskan Native, or from a lower annual household income, experienced just as much distress and likelihood of future suicide attempts as those who did not have supportive parents. Now, if you want to bring awareness to the dangers of discriminating against transgender people, but you for some reason have to twist and omit the information you present, then you've lost your fucking credibility. When it comes to gender identity, having dysphoria and wanting to transition, there is going to be distress. More for some and less for others, granted, but don't try to pin that distress on discrimination alone. And don't be so selfish as to misrepresent the facts to push your own agenda and try to claim that a mental condition is not a mental condition. You're not helping anyone. Now, the last video I done on gender dysphoria being a mental illness got quite a bit of heat in the comment section, so as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below so we can get a bit of a conversation going, but I do have something I'd like to say. It's just a few things before I go, because I'd like to let you all know that I'll be returning to university in a month to begin my final year. Between work, study, and researching for and completing my dissertation, I'm going to be dramatically cutting back on how often I make videos and how available I am to talk to you guys through, Facebook and Twitter. I will still be here, but even if it takes a while, I'll still be reading my messages and comments and things like that. I cannot guarantee I'll get back to you, and if I do, I can't even say when that will be. But I need to be honest and say I'll no longer be doing a video a week. For the past 3 months, I've been doing one a week, and in the beginning, I was even doing more than one a week. But in fact, I might not even be able to do another video for a few months, unless something really catches my eye and prompts me to put the free time aside to do so. Now, with that being said, I've had the audacity to set up a Patreon page, my reasoning being that while I'm away, if I make enough money that when I come back, I'll be able to buy a better mic and make better videos in the future. Again, I'll be honest with you and say I don't know when that will be. It could be as late as December when I stop for the Christmas break. But in any case, I've had a grand time with you guys, and talking and sometimes debating with you has always been a lot of fun, and making these videos has been a lot of fun as well. So I look forward to coming back to you guys, and I know that you'll understand that because making YouTube videos is just a hobby of mine, my real life responsibilities are always going to take precedence. But nonetheless, thank you to all of you, and take care until next time.